So, last time I've told you that I will be making a little longer video on the French pistol that I acquired, and I guess today is the day. So, let's get into the boring section of historical firearms. This, what you're seeing, is a French model M1822T. This particular pistol started its life as a flintlock. Here you can see where the cutout for the flash pan of the flintlock system was, and this you might see it's very crudely welded on. This was done later. This particular piece was made in 1827, which means next year it is 200 years old. This absolute behemoth of a French pistol is .69 caliber, and you would typically load it with .67 round lead ball. Just so you know, that is roughly 450 grains of pure lead. That is 1 ounce, a little over 1 ounce of lead. And you would load it with 30 to 35 grains of roughly what was the 2F powder. Now, with the classic model 1822, you may know that in the 30s a lot of armies accepted into their service the percussion caps, the percussion system, and same did the French. However, they've already had a pretty big stocks of the flintlock pistols and flintlock rifles, same as this one, which they adopted not even like 8 years before they adopted the percussion system. So what they did was, this is the Model T. There is one model which they made afterwards, but I'm gonna talk about that in a little while. They welded this percussion nipple or nipple base on there. They added the front and rear sights on this, from which the picture is pretty shitty, but this one is a smoothbore, so you won't be aiming that much anyways. And they actually put a different ramrod in the pistol.
My name is Optimus Prime.
Now, with the 450 grain projectile this thing fires, and the 30 grains of powder, that's not even 600 feet per second. That is very, very slow, and the idea of that, or for my European homies, that was 180 meters per second. That is very slow. But so just you understand how you would use this pistol, it was basically a up to 10 meters fuck off. This was your sword's best friend. So the first guy that was unfortunate enough to run into you would get this 1 ounce slug into his body. It doesn't matter where you hit him, even if it's an arm shot, a leg shot, or God forbid, a gut shot. You're not going to be that man's problem anymore because you're heavily bleeding or dead on the spot. Now, this gun, as is right now not shootable. It is not shootable because the wood is, as I mentioned, 200 years old next year, and it is all sorts of tiny cracks. On the outside it doesn't look that bad, but on the inside there are visible some repairs which had to happen quite some time ago because the glue was so bad quality it has undone itself basically. Plus, if I put this into full cock right now, I know that this has to be this had to be derusted heavily in the history, because the percussion nipple sits so loosely on it, I can remove it by hand. That is a problem. If I was to fire this, this would fly out, probably into my face. Yeah, so not the greatest of ideas until I get a professional gunsmith that knows how what he's doing with it. However, the good thing is the mechanism is still sound. As you can see, full cock stays on there, and on the half cock I'm a little skeptical about this as well, because the half cock is usually a safe. Now, I've looked on the inside, and nothing on the inside seems that much worn, but if I pull the trigger now, it fires, which would probably set off the percussion cap. So I have to study I gotta study how the French use their military weapons if this half-cock was really just a notch to not lose your percussion cap, so you could then go to the full cock and fire the gun, or if something is internally broken. I believe that the the first notch on this might be worn off. That's why it allows me to to press the trigger and release the cock on this, or the hammer, how would you call this? Now the Model T means transformé or transformed. That's when they remade it from the flintlock into a percussion pistol. However, there was one more transformation going on with these pistols as well, and that is the model M1822T bis. Now the bis would mean something like transformed again, and they would add pretty basic rifling into this barrel. Now this one is still a smoothbore, so for some reason this one underwent only one of the two-stage transformation. What I've looked on the internet, that would mean that this one was the cavalry version, so it would be much easier to load, and you don't need rifling that much when you're like 5-10 meters away from your enemy. He's still getting the ball. This specimen was remade into a percussion style lock in 1861. I've looked under the when I removed the barrel from the whole body, there are two dates: the 1827 date of manufacture originally, and 1861. That's when they remade this pistol into percussion cap, which tells you really that the French army loved using stuff all over and over and over, because this one has pretty significantly long service life for what it is. You have to realize the 19th century was pretty wild era. They went into 19th century with basically flintlocks, smoothbores, and by the end of the century you had machine guns, and all the soldiers were equipped with bolt action rifles, with smokeless powder, with ammunition which had everything in one case. It was pretty wild era, and the armies had to constantly keep up and catch up with what the enemy countries were doing. Now, these models, they have turned in America as well, because in the French army they, were becoming more and more obsolete. So they started sending these pistols into the newly formed US. Well, so to summarize the history of the French M1822T pistol, it started its life as a flintlock 1 year after Napoleon's death. Then the French army accepted percussion rifles and percussion pistols, so they remade all their existing flintlock weaponry into percussion. Later, they added into some models the rifling. However, as these weapons became obsolete, they got sold all over Europe, and as well into the newly forming America, which was undergoing a civil war. And this will be the end of the video. If you've survived through the historical segment, which I hope wasn't as boring as you thought, you've made it. Now you know something about an obsolete 200-year-old French pistol. That's why we do it, man. Now, once this gets done through the gunsmith, I hope I will show you how it shoots at the shooting range, at least with some type of lighter load, because as said, that thing is 200 years old. I'll gladly see you next time. Yeah, this video has not been scripted or anything like that. It is not easy speaking English out of top of my mind when my first two languages are Slavic, and then there's English and German. So I hope you actually did not sleep through the video. I'll see you next time.